Do whatever you want. You do whatever you want. We'll be okay.
Okay. How many we got so far, Nobles?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 people
8 people on time.
on the board.
Okay. 8 people on time. Okay.
Yep.
Hi, Nobles.
Hey, Sally, how's it going?
Good. I missed you the other night.
Oh, what, you did trash pickup?
Yeah. I wanted to see what had been done in the day since we did our big river sweep, because that was a huge event. We had
Oh, wow. How many people showed up to that?
over 50 families, a Girl Scout, yeah, Uptown Dreamers. Yeah, we had 1 million people.
That's amazing. That's great.
It's not that many people. We had Eventbrite to pre-register through. And then some people don't really read through when it's on Facebook. They won't read through it. They'll just sign up there. But between the two of them, we didn't have anywhere. If I assume they were all different, we were probably at half that size.
Wow, that's amazing.
Hi, Mariella.
Hello.
Quick question. Do we have a Mariella Graham and a Mariella Ali, or is it one of the same person?
No,
Two
two
different?
different ones. Yes.
Okay.
What's the house behind you, Wayne?
It's a picture of a house they took out on at Martha's Vineyard, Oak Bluffs.
Oh, neat.
Thought it was a Buddha joint, like a Buddha temple or something.
Martha's Vineyard. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Shout out to Martha's
I didn't
Vineyard.
get there at all this year or last year. Last year, when I thought about going, it was like literally the end of the season. And that's what happens when you don't pay attention to the season.
No, so
Yeah, I
let me-
went
let me-
last year. It was great, but this year, of course, obviously, it's just complicated. So no.
Well, yeah.
So the two, let me say hi to the new folks. Mariela, not Ali, but Graham, Miss Era Santiago, Liz, Leo Jimenez, Mr. Jimenez.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Hello.
My eyes are so bad. I'm using a magnifying glass.
I guess the more critical question is how many attendees do we have? I mean, we want members of the public at this public hearing.
A total 17 folks we have.
Yeah, but only 3 of them are attendees.
Yep,
So
they are.
I
So
prefer
far.
to see, 14 people who are not on the board.
Maureen Collins, Maggie Clark, Sheldon Miller.
Probably outreach for this hearing is about one of the few things we do not one of the things we do not very well at all.
It's also early too. 6:30 is usually pretty tough. Usually 6:45 is when people start rolling in, just because work and things.
Mhm.
Although so many people are working
Yeah, exactly.
from home that they should be able to connect more easily because they don't have to travel.
I mean, when it comes to me, I'm back-to-back meetings because I'm not working at the office that it's so packed in. And by the end of the day, I'm like 10 minutes behind, period.
Yeah. I just find it that, if I were at work, in some cases, just the amount of time it takes to get from home to work or back and forth, sometimes that cuts into things. Whereas if I'm commuting from my bedroom to my living room, it's a little easier.
You know what's funny, Wayne? So my daughter goes to kindergarten at PS 187 right across the street from us. And the only people that are usually late for school are the folks that live across the street.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like one of those instances where even though it's so accessible and quick, like
I went to high school with a guy, and someone else in the class went to junior high school with him. She lived across the street from the school. She was late every single day.
I can relate. I can relate.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, Curtis.
Hey.
Curtis.
Can we talk about Ariel's beard for a second? When did you grow a beard, bro? That COVID life.
It's probably already the 4th of this past 7 months.
Oh,
I like
wow.
Yeah.
It's nice. Good job.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks good.
We got tired of your
Babyish good looks.
yeah, not that it is good look, but he just looked like a little boy, like the little boy look, like one of those band boys.
What?
Is there an order by chance? I'm at the 35th precinct NCO Sector B meeting right now, and it starts at 7. So I was wondering if there was an order.
There is an agenda. I think Catherine's going to
Yeah,
put it
there
up
is.
in a second. But we're going to be keeping a very strict timeline tonight. Of course, all respectable, but definitely a strict timeline because this is not a general board meeting. It is a special session. But
Well, it's already 6:34 Nobles.
say what?
It's only 6:34.
Or
Oh yeah, because we start at
6:30.
6:30, right? Yeah.
We'll give it a few more minutes
Yeah.
before we get started.
Yep. But no one will be shortchanged on time because of a late start. We'll
Mhm.
find other places to make that up.
I'll be on mute until my name is called. So
Cool.
if I don't respond, just scream, Curtis.
Cool. And when you see the agenda, Curtis, I think that we have your order on there. So you'll see exactly when you're going to be able to speak.
Okay,
From a quorum perspective,
I think we're good.
Yeah, I believe we are good here.
So we're gonna call the meeting to order, right?
How many do we have?
18
Oh,
and growing, so 19 now.
But that's not quorum though.
that's
Don't
a
we have to
quorum.
have half of 50? I mean, don't we have to have 26?
We're not voting or passing a resolution, so.
That's right. Yeah, it's not a
Okay,
Right.
so we don't have quorum, but we have more than we have had in past years.
Yeah,
and
oh
I'm
yeah,
s-
oh yeah, oh yes.
And I'm seeing all of the committee leads I think are here already. Where's Mary? Because really that's the most important thing is making sure the committee leads are here to speak for their budget orders.
Okay.
I'm
I
sure
don't
people
s-
will join.
Yeah, I don't see
Um,
Mary.
Yeah. but-
Nobles, Eleazar, we
Yes,
do
ma'am.
need, although we're not voting, we are supposed to have quorum, otherwise it's not an official meeting. We generally don't have quorum for this meeting, which is unfortunate. But it would be ideal if we had quorum.
But
Yeah, yeah,
my,
that is,
this is a public hearing, and for a public hearing, we need 10 board members.
In that case, we're good.
We are good.
I was
Let's
just
start
gonna
it
say
up.
that.
Yeah, let's
Wayne,
start it up.
Wayne, thank you for throwing that bone at me.
Right,
Yeah.
so, but we just have to remember that,
Yes.
it's not a committee meeting, it's not a board meeting, it's a public hearing. And for a public hearing, we need 10 board members.
Today I
Fair
learned.
enough. So
Yay,
let's call the
yay.
meeting to order,
Call to order.
right? Let's call the meeting to order.
I am walking, so I literally stand corrected.
And I'm having Thai food.
All right.
6:36, folks.
Yep.
Is the most joyful of all budget rankings meetings that I've ever attended. So we're gonna switch it up a little by sort of like making it more informational towards the newer members and those of us, and I'm going to include myself, who don't necessarily comprehend the entirety of what the budget ranking process is and its importance. So we're gonna knock it out in three, sort of like breaking it down into main objectives. One is just to inform the members, especially the newer members, what the civic budget priorities is, purpose, and the process. We're also going to create an opportunity for the committee chairs to educate the public on the items included and ranked. And we're also going to explain our fellow board members and how to submit those rankings, especially in this now technology world of ours, the Zoom world, how we're going to do the voting, the electronically, and so forth. So the first thing first is, what really is a budget hearing and how do we conduct it? I'm just gonna kind of like something that it really, I'm gonna use it from my own experience, is that I needed to understand, people need to understand the difference between a capital expense and a expense budget, right? Capital expenses, again, are something like street repaving, street furniture, dog runs, public bathrooms, computers, and so forth. And anything that's over $35,000 and above is a capital expense. Now, expense budgets is sort of the same as an operating account, sort of like the things that you do for paying rent, electricity, and insurance. So I want to establish that from the beginning, the difference between a capital budget capital budget and an expense budget item. I want to get that out of the way. There are other things that Ebenezer, I wanted him to, since he's the more, I don't think he's the more experienced, but uh, maybe Wayne and Liz are probably from the group, the people who have the more experience during this process. So I wanted Ebenezer to go over a few points briefly, couple of minutes, and Wayne and Liz more than welcome to chime in and help us all through this process. Ebenezer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the budget ranking, this public hearing that we do is a city charter mandate, part of the budget ranking of the city of New York. That this process is described in the city charter, and it's good to know that this process of the budget allocation lasts for 13 months. So what we're doing now, this process that we call the public hearing for us, is part of a 13-month process that started in June this year. And now we are planning for the fiscal year 22. We are in fiscal year 21. This fiscal year 21 started July 1st of 2020. And on July 1st, 2020, conclude a period of 13 months planning for the fiscal year 21. Now we are planning for fiscal year 22, and this process has started in June this year by having the local budget consultation where the community board have a consultation with the city agencies, asking what they need, et cetera, et cetera. Then we have the citywide budget consultation where the 12 community boards in Manhattan and the 59 community boards citywide meet with the city agencies, asking what they need, what is the recommendation, what they need. Then we come to this process today where the committees, they ranks the priority of their need based on the last budget, based on what we have dealt during this year for the complaints we have from the residents, the needs that we see. And now during these few months, September and October, you in your committee discussed the budget and you did the ranking according to your committee. Okay, this is the committee recommendation for, this is our priority as a committee. Now it comes to the full board, but to get the information from the, also to get input, shall I say, from the residents. Okay, this is what are the committee recommendations. And now we're gonna rank as a full board, what's gonna be the first item for the board as a need, identify as a need. And that what's gonna happen tonight by the voting. People are gonna vote according to your conscience. You're gonna vote, now you as a board member are gonna vote for me, number one is probably what is number 5 in the transportation committee, just to say a number. This is my priority because it's where I live. Or maybe for me, number 1 is the one for the business, etc. You're gonna decide your own conscience what should be number 1, number 2, number 3 among all the capital recommendation that we have from the 10 committees. And also you're gonna rank what is most important for you from the expenses that have been listed by the committees. And then we're gonna do a tally, we're gonna do a survey, and we're gonna do a process where we're gonna sum every voting, and then we're gonna divide it among the people who participate, and then we're gonna have the final ranking, and really is like a lottery. It's really gonna happen who has the majority vote at a particular time of the items. And also, I need to bring to your attention that for the last 5 years, this process had been unified in one process under the city planning agency. In the past, it was a separate process with the OMB, the Office of Budget and Management, and also the city planning. They have 2 parallel processes. One process, the OMB, was to have the ranking, and the city planning had a separate document that they call the Statement of District Needs. Now, in the last 5 years, these 2 process has been unified in one, and now we have the Statement of Community Needs and Community Board Budget Requests. That is an statement. What they're trying to do now is base or based on the budget allocation from the community board, we're gonna infer in the narrative and also in the statement of district need what are the most important items for the community board. And this has a process that we have been working, Eleazar and I, we have been working for the last month and a half, putting this together. And by the end of the month, we should have the report all the way completed for fiscal year 22. This is the end of my contribution, and Eleazar, take it away. I don't know if it's Liz or
Question. I have a question.
would like to include. Yes, question, Sally.
I think we're gonna, yeah, sure. We're gonna have a Q&A, but go ahead, Sally. We're gonna.
Yeah, my question is, how is the input from the consultations with the city agencies, how is that filtered back to us? I've been on the community board for what, 4 years? I've never heard feedback from the consultation to the committee before we do our rankings. I mean, now it's too late, but that would be helpful.
Well, it's a process that happened. I usually attend those meetings, and the process has been simplified a little bit by questionnaire, and I send those questions to you guys every year. It happens that most of the time, people do not pay attention to it, but that's the way it goes. So we have these rankings or this consultation. We receive the questionnaire, answer with the city agency answer, and I send it to you guys.
Okay, I've just never received it, and it's never come through a committee. I'm just curious, because a lot of times when those guys present, they present like PowerPoints or whatever that explain to us where they are at any point in time. And I'm just saying that in the future, that would be useful information to provide back to members. And I've never seen it.
Yeah. DCP has been extremely very outward, very collaborative. We've had 2 or 3 meetings with Chris Polak and I think the other guy's gentleman's name is Julio Hernandez. So they are really, for the first time that I've been involved, trying to make an effort to get not just the staff and the chair and the executive people and just committee chairs, but they want every single board member to understand the process, and the follow-up is also critical. The way that things are being set up now differently. I don't know if Ebenezer can testify to that, but this is the first time that I'm sort of like more involved, but I see a difference in as to how the city is more involved in making sure that we all are part of the process and the follow-up, which is just as important as the process itself.
Yeah, but just to follow up on Sally's point, typically there is a document, and I don't recall what it's called, but it's the city's response.
Right.
And I remember last year we had it because we were comparing the land use priorities, the board's ranking, and then the city's response. And so the city might say this is something is done and we agree or disagree with it. So this year I didn't see that, but typically, Sally, that document,
Yeah, I've seen that
was
one.
the city's response,
Okay,
comes back to us, and they're telling us either
Right.
go back to your councilman and ask for money, or
We
we're
got a lot.
working on this, or we can't do it, something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Committee chair here, I'd like to just point this Liz Ritter, Parks and Cultural Affairs. I don't know what happens on other committees, but on our committee, we have a representative from the Parks Department, and presumably we would have representatives from the other agencies that are relevant to other committees saying these are what our priorities are and explaining why they think one particular project or program is more important or less important than other projects or programs. So we had representatives from several of the cultural institutions talking about advocating for their priorities, and the Parks Department explaining sort of what their priorities were. And that was part of the discussion that we had in our committee. I would like to think that someone from the MTA or the precincts or what have you are attending traffic and transportation, public safety, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
It'd be nice to have
So-
cultural affairs.
And Chair Bueno, I just want to keep us
Okay.
on time. or
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
gonna-
yeah. I was just
Yeah.
gonna say that.
Okay.
I have a
So,
question.
is there, no, before we move on, is there anyone from the public or our board who needs any type of clarification before we move on to the next agenda item? This is the time, because like
Sorry,
nobles.
Eliezer, Barbara does. I have my hand raised. Are you seeing the raised
No,
hand?
I can't. No, I can't. I can't even.
Just
see
go
it.
for it, Barbara. Go for it.
Okay, yeah, because I raised my hand. All right, a question. When we put something up as a budget item, sometimes I see that it gets a number, a file number, a budget number from the city. Sometimes it does not. When does it qualify, or what part of the process is it when it actually gets that budget number?
I can answer that.
Thank you, Liz.
So that's something that's assigned by OMB once we submit our rankings to OMB. So the items that are new don't have a number when they're submitted for the first time. The numbers sort of carry over from year to year, but the last couple of digits of the number are the fiscal year for which the project is. So the number of the project is going to change every year. You know, last year they would be blah, 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 21 E for expense or C for capital. This year, once they get submitted, those will change to the same blah, 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 22.
Okay.
But that's assigned by OMB.
You
But that
understand,
doesn't
Barbara?
mean it's necessarily funded, right? It doesn't
Yeah,
mean
That is
that
correct. That's
Correct.
getting that number from OMB just makes it easier to track, because it's a lot easier to type in a 10-digit number than to type in a 15 or 20 word description of what the project is. So it's easier to just track and follow, but it's not a particularly meaningful number other than indicating that OMB is aware that we have added it as a priority and carrying a descriptor of what fiscal year it's in and whether it's a capital project or an expense program.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
Thanks.
I would like to add a little bit more. Yesterday, we had a conversation with the city planning regarding the budget number, and is the budget number that is assigned after we submit it to city planning, state identifying that request, and it's still there until that request is fulfilled. If you change the wording of the request of the reason why, it will be considered a new number traditional. However, this year they said if the wording was changed a little bit, but it's still being the same request or very similar request, they ask us to keep the same number that we had for last year.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. And with
So-
this, I'd like to
Yes,
get
Catherine.
Oh, wait, I have my hand up because I have to mention something before all of this in regards to my ability not to be able to vote in this process. As last year, I brought up this issue where I thought that due to my position in the DOE, that it would be almost it wouldn't make sense for me to vote because of stuff that I know. So Steve Simon in that same meeting thought the same thing for his position at the Parks Department. We reached out to the Manhattan Borough's president's office and they investigated and confirmed that both Steve and I can't actually rank and vote in these things. So I am here to listen and see how everyone does, but I cannot submit a voting later on.
Cool. And in the form, it's mandatory for names, so we'll make sure that your name is not on there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Omar, for the clarification. So, Catherine?
Yep.
All right, awesome. So as some folks who know on this call, in previous years, we would, have this sheet in person, rank. Sometimes there'll be a million mistakes and, because new items may be added or language might be shifted. And it would be tallied by hand. And so for better or for worse, in this virtual world, we get to use SurveyMonkey. And so it makes the process faster individually for us to rank. I think it's also more enjoyable, but that's just me. And it also makes it easier for the office staff and for the team to basically export it and no longer tally it, which Liz as secretary used to do. So thumbs up for that. And so I just want to be able to explain really quickly how we're even approaching this. And then we'll move on to hearing from committee chairs.
I'm the former secretary. It's on OC now.
Yes. So lucky her now. So anyway, so this is just a quick screenshot of the link that everyone should have received. Chanel sent it out twice today. And then it's a really simple SurveyMonkey. And so you can either vote on either, right? We're doing both capital. So essentially it's 2 questions. You're ranking your capital projects and you're ranking your expense items. And so you can either numerically enter it, right? So you click on the 2 arrows, you'll pick the number, or you can drag and drop them in the order, again, of what's the highest priority to the lowest priority based on our district needs, based on your experience and your thoughts and blah, blah, blah. And so that's essentially how we do it. You know, we have great attendance today. We know that not all board members are present. So this Survey Monkey is going to be open for the next 48 hours. And so that also allows for folks who are on our board who do not feel as comfortable with Survey Monkey, who will basically our board office is going to do some outreach and compile that, right? So if folks don't feel comfortable with Survey Monkey, they're able to do it on paper, and they will email it to Ebenezer, and Ebenezer and the office team will also reach out to folks as well. So we know folks aren't present. We'll reach out, make sure that they see the Survey Monkey. The good thing is that this hearing is being recorded and on Facebook, so folks who aren't able to join in can just rewatch it and listen if anybody has to hop off also. So that'll work. I think that's as best as I breeze through process.
Yep.
So we have a hybrid approach. Survey Monkey, easy, open till Friday, 8 p.m. And you can also print it if you want to be, using paper, and email it to Ebenezer at the office.
Yep.
All right, cool. So that being said, we really want to use the time today to have chairs offer some really cool highlights about their committee's rankings. This is the order, but we're actually going to switch to public safety since Curtis shared that he has another meeting. So I'll let you take it away. And each chair has 2 minutes, and then we're going to have a space of 3 minutes for Q&A from members of the public, and Nobles is keeping track of time. Thank you.
Yes, and I will be as respectable as possible. You can always ask me how much more time you have, but please respect the 5-minute limit because we're trying to be fair to all chairs.
I'm sorry, Martin Collins raised his hand like 5 minutes ago.
Thank you.
He's gonna get around to the, I spoke to Martin and he's gonna get around to the Q&A. I already promised him this time. He just needs to kind of like let the process fall through a little.
Okay, so thank you all.
So Curtis, Catherine?
Excuse me, I have my hand raised.
Oh, yeah, Mary, go ahead, Mary.
Because there's a problem with my list on the expense budget.
Okay, so we'll get to that then.
Yeah, if you want, I won't take it out of your time. Tell me what the issue is, and I can fix it in real time on the survey.
There's the same item twice. And there's one missing.
We removed it from the survey link.
Yeah, you might be looking at the Excel sheet, Mary. The survey link has the duplicate removed. But if there's one missing, let me know during your time and I can fix it, and then I'll let the time start after. Cool?
Well, I'm having trouble going back and forth because I printed out the expense budget that Chanel had posted, but I can't print out the capital budget items.
All right.
So I can't.
I can fix it. I can fix it at your section, and I won't take it from your time. Is that okay?
Yeah. All right, Ebenezer, please give
I
her a
don't know.
call.
I'm confused.
Ebenezer, give her a call and try to
I'm
sort
very
that out.
confused.
All right.
All right, may I go?
Go for it, Curtis.
Yeah, Curtis, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. I am actually at the 35th Precinct NCO meeting right now, so start in a few minutes. I'll be brief. So
I'm
for the
sorry,
most
Lisa,
part,
you want me to?
Excuse me, can you hear me?
We can
No,
barely
we can't hear you, Curtis.
Oh, I'll check it off because I'm in the private section. So, can you hear me now?
Yes.
It's rather low.
Okay. All right. It's rather low. Okay. Volume up. Is that better?
It's getting there. Just try it, and we'll let you know if there's an issue, but I can hear you fine.
I'll go in the hallway. This has to be better. Okay.
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
Thank you. So thank you all very much. I'm going to be very brief. These are our 6 items for the Public Safety Committee. Many of them are the same items as last year. We did change a few of the wording based on our last this past year. And
Catherine,
the
did
challenges
you
that
put
we
the
face.
items up?
Continue, Curtis. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first item is to expand domestic violence and anti-sexual harassment programs and training. That is the same item as last year, no change. The second item was to expand implicit bias, mental health, training for officers. We felt that was extremely necessary and appropriate considering the calls to provide external services and additional support for the precincts when they have non-emergency calls such as mental health issues. So that was a really important item for us. That's why we ranked it number 2. Number 3 was to have, instead of advocating in previous years, we've advocated for additional officers at our precincts. We felt that it was important to advocate for mental health or clinical professional staff as a part of the precinct internally at the precincts. And the 4th item was to expand public education programs. This is a byproduct of all the conversations we've had over the past 6 months, with fireworks. So the NYPD and FDNY attended my meeting, and they did talk about efforts they have in place for next year that includes public education programs. So we wanted to show support for those sort of initiatives, to have awareness campaigns. They'll be outside talking to people about the impact of fireworks, et cetera, in our community. So I thought that was a really good addition to our list. That's a new item as well. And then the 5th item is to increase funding to support the issues addressing and correcting violations in regards to the potential fires in housing and other places. So we added the word restaurants because we felt that with the advent of outdoor dining that we wanted to show support for additional funding for initiatives and efforts that would help curb or mitigate potential risks involved with electrical, gas, and et cetera, propane tanks on roofs and electrical tanks, heating tanks outside during these crazy cold months. And the last one is the speed camera issue. We wanted to support, as we did last year, speed cameras in particular areas. We didn't feel comfortable as a committee blindly saying speed cameras in humps. Last year was only 1 precinct actually, so we added the 34th and 33rd, and we put in a parenthetical in areas where there is a substantial amount of drag racing and or deaths because of speed or these sort of issues. We don't know the exact locations just yet, so we would love to have an opportunity to make a recommendation on the exact street. We do feel like it's a little bit dangerous to give authority to have an influx of cameras across the district, but we do feel like it's necessary in particular areas where there have been a substantial amount of complaints. So that's it for that section. I'll go to the next area, and I'll yield the rest of my time for questions.
Yep, you have 2 minutes for questions, Curtis.
Okay, so this is, number 1 item was, obviously we had 17,031 complaints over the summer for noise complaints, but we also felt that it was important for the system to be upgraded. We had this item listed last year to upgrade 301, but it wasn't as descriptive as this. One of the things we've noticed over the summer is that there isn't a Spanish language capability. So we want to make sure that we are able to have a 301 service that includes Spanish language as an option in other languages as well. But for our community, we wanted to make sure we were advocating for Spanish language capabilities in 311. And the second item is the same as last year, decibel readers. There was, the third item is from last year, light tower. And this is just a light tower that the NYPD would use in events, if they were out doing a particular area in the evening hours, or they set up something. It's a removable tower. It's not a tower that would be in one location for extended periods of time. If there's like an evening block party or something of that nature, that's what the removable light tower would be used for. Then the 4th item is a continuation from last year, a bariatric stretcher. This is used for people who are a little bit larger and can't fit on the traditional normal size stretchers. This is for in FDNY. And then we have the 2 Argus cameras. These are cameras that are able to actually capture the faces of individuals. We've noticed that when you see these images on television and across the city of people who have committed a crime, you can never see their faces. So the Argus camera is a higher quality camera that we should be at least providing to our precincts if we expect them to do their jobs. And the last item is the all-terrain vehicle. This was an item that was also carried over from last year, but this year, one difference is that we received the issue a few weeks ago where there was someone in the park, and the NYPD and the fire department and medical facility, they're not able to get into certain parts of the park. They would use the ATV vehicle to access whatever the person in need is located. So those are our items. I'm happy to answer any questions about those.
We're at 5:30 right now. For folks, other folks, like please try to stick within the 5 minutes in terms of your descriptions, or at 3 minutes and 2 minutes of questions, but we can open up for a minute of questions. I know you got to run if you need
I
to.
have a very quick question. This is Liz.
Yes.
So I see that, and thank you, a number of your items relate to sort of public safety enforcement in parks. So they're parks issues, but they're really public safety, which is why they're not in my committee, they're in yours. Did your committee have the opportunity to talk at all about cameras in parks, which needs to be through the public safety and through the PD, because it requires the NYPD to install the equipment and to monitor it, because that's not something Parks has the capacity to do.
We did not talk about cameras in parks at all this year.
Okay.
No.
Can
that
we
something-
add
is
that
that-
in? Can
Yes.
we add that in for the board's consideration?
Yes, we can totally add that in. Do you think we should add it in under the item where we have cameras now and just add an extra sentence, or that's a separate line item?
I actually think because they're linked, although there's traffic cameras
Doubles.
versus there, but
Hold
although
on one
there's
second.
different kinds of cameras, I would suggest putting them together in one item.
Okay, great.
Cur-
Perfect.
Curtis?
We can add that, yes. Mhm.
Okay, guys,
I
we're at
think- yeah,
7
we
minutes
need to
right
go.
now.
Yes.
We got to keep moving. And I will say, we have 48 hours to fill this out. So if you have follow-up questions for Curtis,
Call the person offline.
right. Thank you. Catherine, committee, which is the next committee? And I heard the change, Curtis. I'll connect with you offline to update the survey on that.
Yes,
you.
so
Thank you.
next up is parks. And just let me know if you're gonna start with capital or expense, so I can share it.
Can you do me a favor and have another committee go next so that I can hop off of my phone and onto my computer?
Sure, just give me a second, I can pull back up my list. Land use. Wayne, you ready?
Sure. So I'm going to begin with expense and then move to capital, okay?
Got it.
So the land use committee had only one expense and one capital item for last year's budget. And we were pleased that the board as a whole ranked each of those items in the top 5 and feel they are still relevant, and made slight tweaks and resubmitted them for the upcoming fiscal year. So on the expense side, we asked for additional planning staff to work with CB12 and local residents. And this is the change that was added to update CB12M's 2007 neighborhood planning and land use study and formulate a community-based neighborhood preservation and zoning plan for Washington Heights and Inwood, exclusive of any work undertaken in connection with EDC's Inwood rezoning. Last year's request did not specifically reference updating the planning study that we undertook with the assistance of City College in 2007. That is by far the most extensive planning study done for the neighborhood, much more extensive than anything done by EDC. So what we're saying is, in addition to formulating a current plan, we should begin by updating that plan and have it inform what we do moving forward. And just the last part of that, one of the OMB responses was they were taking the inward rezoning as partially responding to this request, and we're making it clear that we do not consider the work that EDC did on the inward rezoning as being responsive to this request. That was not a neighborhood preservation plan, and that did not at all take into account anything that was in the 2007 study, which we did share with them before they undertook their study. So that's the expense item for land use. On the capital side, very minor tweak. It calls for the allocation of capital funds to support a development initiative in Washington Heights and Inwood, whereby vacant city-owned lots and buildings are packaged in one or more RFPs dedicated to scattered site, infill, affordable, and the word affordable was added this time. Before, it simply referred to infill residential projects for which affordability is defined by the area median income of current CB12 residents. And I will say that this is something that is not limited to CB12. At the recent borough board meeting, the chair of CB9 pointed out that there are city-owned buildings in the district that are vacant that could go towards affordable housing, but they're sitting vacant. So this is something that we might want to talk to our other boards, but we're saying that there are vacant lots that the city owns, they're vacant buildings, they've been sitting for years. Let's put them in an RFP, let's allocate capital funds so they can be affordable, and let's get them developed so we can begin to address the dire need for affordable housing in the community. And those are the two land use items.
You have about a minute and a half for questions. I see a bunch of hands raised, but I'm not sure if people have put their hands down. Anyone want to answer a question? No questions?
Hearing none, next.
Nice job, Wayne. All right, next committee then. Thank you.
Back to parks. I'm ready. Thank you for your indulgence, and thank you, Wayne, for being ready. So I feel like they're all my children, and I love them all of these projects. Parks and Cultural Affairs typically has more projects than any other committee and more than several committees combined. There are two reasons for this. One is that unlike every other city agency, the Department of Parks and Recreation does not have its own capital budget. So 100% of the capital projects have to go through this process. The second thing that's really important to keep in mind is within Community District 12, about 40% of the land in Community Districts 12 is parkland. So if you think of it from that perspective, it's actually appropriate for the majority of our projects to come from this committee and for this board to rank, to highly rank many parks projects, because this is the only way that parks sort of gets its funding. In terms of the actual projects, there isn't enough time for me to go through all of them. You can read them on your own. They are all important, even if they're not important to you. You might not think that barbecuing is important to you, but there are many people who do not have houses in the Hamptons, who cannot go to the suburbs. They rely on the recreational facilities of Parks and Recreation. Many of the projects relate to accessibility in bathrooms, either retrofitting existing comfort stations or adding new ones. There's a lot of basketball. You might think, basketball, not my thing, or I'm not a child, or who cares, or why aren't we playing golf or some other sport? Don't vote for yourself. Keep in mind what other people need. Keep in mind the powerful testimony of people throughout this community who year after year attest to the importance of bathrooms, of ball fields, of basketball courts, and of many of these other amenities that, as I said, may not be important to you, but they are important to your neighbors. So that's the capital piece. I will put in a personal pitch for the least glamorous, but I think most important thing, which is just repaving the paths. You watched me walk to this meeting through a dark park, and I was able to do that because the paths are paved. In terms of expense programs, I don't have it handy, but we really have, in these COVID times, a desperate need for more funding for programming and for more funding for arts and culture, more funding for staff to maintain parks because they are more heavily used. And keep in mind, the Parks Department has gotten a 14% budget cut. That's my report. I think I have about 90 seconds left.
You have 2 minutes left. And expenses, Catherine just pulled them up.
Thanks. Are there questions?
I have a question on
I'd
the
like
expense one.
I'd like to say something.
I'm going to take Angel's question first.
If you want to go through the expense budget first, that's fine. Or did you, because that's what I was going to hit.
No, I mean, all of the expense items are pretty self-explanatory. So the one change is that the Native American African burial grounds used to be a capital project. And we had attached to that the building of some kind of structure in which programming could take place. So that made it a capital program, a project. Now that we've removed that out and it's really just about like signage and curation and maybe something with Q codes, that is not a capital project. That's an expense program. And that's why it moved from capital to expense. And that's why it's new, even though it's really not new, but it's new as an expense item.
Inhale, what's your question? Because we only
Yeah,
have a
so
minute. I don't want to.
It was going to be in regards to that particular project. Liz, I'm sure you remember when I was with the state senator.
Yes, I do.
Great. So we had conversations with the Dykeman farmhouse. I believe there were funds allocated as well to be able to do some type of capital expense work here where a physical memorial could be built out. Let's talk offline if you want so that maybe we could do some follow-up, and because I know we also involved Assemblywoman Carmen De La Rosa's office.
That would be great. And yes, let's talk. And Barbara, I think we got about 15 seconds left, so make it fast.
I'll give you
yeah.
a little bit.
I overlooked one of the projects highlighted is to, at the Loftus Playground, build a special needs playground for the autistic, for the blind, for all special needs children. We have no special needs playground in north of 96th Street. It's a crying need. And the Loftus Playground is uniquely suited for that because it's a little bit below street level. It's quieter. There's also grassy area immediately, next to it. It already has bathrooms available.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Barbara. We're a little bit over time. What's your question?
Right. I'm not.
She's
So I'm
just-
just highlighting.
She's
it was
she's
overlooked.
plugging a project that's important to her. All of the projects are important to everybody, and they are all pretty self-explanatory. So with that, I yield my time, which is.
Thank you, Liz. Catherine?
Yeah, Steve Simon, let me see. Yes, Steve Simon, Health and Environment.
Oh, very good.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm so sorry. I need just 5 seconds to say that we're also the Cultural Affairs Committee. There are a number of cultural related projects, including the one that the committee in the aggregate ranked #1, which is funding for the Hispanic Society and many improvements there to make it accessible. But anyway.
You just vamped for Steve. You let him some time. Go for it, Steve.
You want capital or expense to be shared first?
Put up the expense first.
All right, starting your time, Steve.
All right, so the Health and Environment Committee has the 11 expense items. Number one, which has been our #1 priority for I think the last 6 years. And during that period has been the board's #1 priority several times, is to expand mental health services in the community. This year, we're at the urging of the Committee on the Aging. We're emphasizing the fact that these services are needed, especially for seniors and others whose mental health and social engagement have been adversely impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. Our second priority is to increase services to prevent and treat chronic diseases such as Alzheimer's, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, and hypertension, conditions that increase susceptibility to COVID-19. And COVID-19 is a theme through many of our priorities. Our third priority is to increase trash basket collection on commercial streets in District 12, fully restoring the FY21 budget cuts. I'm sure as many of you have noticed, our streets truly look trashy because of the lack of reduced number of pickups caused by the budget cuts. Some of the budget cut, I understand, is being restored in part, but what we're urging here is that it be fully restored. The fourth priority from our committee is to increase staff to conduct regular noise enforcement in the community, especially at night. Air quality monitoring and water quality testing in our community. This in part is a response to many of the complaints that our board has heard this summer about noise issues. This would not satisfy all of those problems or respond to all of those problems, but it would show, at least in that our board does consider noise to be a very significant issue. Our next priority is brand new for this year, and again, derives from the COVID-19 issue. It is to increase funding for a targeted educational outreach campaign for COVID-19 prevention and support services in underserved communities such as Washington Heights Inwood. Our next priority is to increase HIV/AIDS prevention and treatment services and LGBTQ services in our community. The next one is to increase substance abuse services, including the opioid overdose prevention education and funding for syringe cleanups and collections. The next one is to increase pest control efforts to eliminate rats, cockroaches, etc. in our community. The next one is to provide funding to ensure that all local public schools have multi-service health clinics with nurses and social workers. The next one is a repeat from last year. Increased funding for education and outreach on recycling, reuse, and composting, as well as the proper disposal of household garbage in our community, which if done effectively would help reduce some of our problems with overflowing trash baskets especially on commercial streets. And the last one is to create an educational campaign about the federal public charge rule to inform immigrants of their rights to obtain health services and other benefits. This rule has been, an injunction has been issued in federal court against the enforcement of this rule, but it is only in effect during the COVID-19 crisis. So once that crisis is diminished, this will once again become an issue that many of our residents are going to be facing. Ebenezer, I would want to point out that these last two items are not new. They are repeats from last year. Now, if we could go to the capital list.
It kills me to say this, Steve, because I love you so much, but you got a minute left, my friend.
Well, thank you, Nobles. Well, our capital list is basically a repeat from last year. The first one is to expedite the replacement of old water mains and sewer lines in our community. A lot of work has been done on this issue in the last 2 years, but we still have in several areas some old water mains and sewer lines that do need to be replaced. And our other two items are to provide additional garbage collection trucks and street sweepers with snow plows, and to install green infrastructure such as bioswales to divert stormwater from the sewer system. And then we have one which is an old item which you don't have to rank, which is because it is funded in the city budget, although I don't know if it's moving at this point, but it's to construct a new garage on the east side, Midtown East, so that its trucks can finally be relocated from our garage on 215th Street. Thank you.
I'll give you a few seconds for a question. Does anyone have a question for Steve? All right, Catherine, back to you.
Okay, next up is concerns for the aging.
So Mary, this is yours, right?
Yeah. The capital. We'll start with capital.
Yeah, because I promise you, Mary, we can make a change if you needed it. That's outside of your time. The duplication is not in the Survey Monkey, so it's fine there.
Okay.
I know the exact one you're talking about, but you said you're missing an item. I took a look at the Excel sheet and I'm not finding one that's being missed, but the Excel sheet might be the issue.
Okay, it's under the expense, but I'll do the capital first. The first one, it's actually a change of wording, so it should probably be new. Yeah, that should be new, Ebenezer. Because we changed the wording on it. It's kind of the same thing. System-wide upgrade of CB12 area to improve access to connectivity and Wi-Fi. Originally, that had been to improve access to connectivity and Wi-Fi in senior centers. But with the COVID and all of the Zoom meetings and expectations that seniors will, log into a number of things at various venues, we would like to consider that all of CB12M area be updated as far as connectivity. The second, renovate existing or build replacement senior centers as necessary to comply with ADA and DFTA regulations There are still some senior centers that are not ADA approved. And that is part of the DFTA regulations. And it also prevents people in the area of those particular senior centers to take advantage of what they offer. Third is provide funding to construct affordable, accessible senior housing. We can have affordable senior housing, or we can have accessible senior housing, but not both. So we'd like to improve that funding. Okay, and we can move to the expense budget items.
Get it on the screen.
Okay, let's see. 2, 3. Yeah, see the second and third one? Yeah, same thing.
So on the Excel sheet, it's duplicated, but on the Survey Monkey, it's not. So it's fixed where people need to vote.
Except that there is a third item that, is not there.
And that's the one I was asking for. If you
Okay.
give it to me, I can add it to the survey,
Okay.
like right now.
Okay. Ready?
I am.
Increase funding to expand services at senior centers and CD12M to include hiring additional social workers and program coordinators, comma, adding meals, comma, extending hours, comma, increasing per meal reimbursement rates.
Can you repeat that one more time just to make sure I have it?
Okay. Increase funding to expand services at senior centers and CB12M to include hiring additional social workers and program coordinators, adding meals, extending hours, increasing per meal reimbursement rates.
Nobles, that's actually her number 2 item, ranking item in last year's expense budget. So if there's any other clarification, I can just send it to you.
Send it to me if you could.
All right,
Yeah,
I'll
that'd be
send it
great.
to you. Yeah,
Thank
that's,
you.
That was last year's number 2. Her last year's number 2.
I have a fast typing hand, but I didn't catch all of it. So yeah, shoot it over to me. I didn't count that towards your time, Mary.
That's
But
okay.
I'll start your clock back up now. Is that cool?
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so the first item, increase access and outreach to healthy, cultural appropriate food for seniors with medical needs. And that's a revision from last year. Because we wanted to include culturally appropriate food. Number 2, increase the expansion in the program, expanded in-home services for elderly persons, funding to provide affordable home care, including sliding scale reimbursement. Some of the agencies are outrageously expensive in terms of getting home care, especially for those that happen to have a bit of money and have to self-pay. Number 3, increase funding to expand services at senior centers and CB12M to include hiring additional social workers and program coordinators, adding meals, extending hours, increasing per meal reimbursement rates. This is actually, let's see. All right. Number 4, increase funding for transportation for seniors by restoring prior city council funding and expanding access and outreach. The funding for transportation for seniors has been decreased. So we need to get that back up so that there can be sufficient transportation. Increase funding for naturally occurring retirement communities to support currently unfunded mandate for nursing hours. We'd like to see these NORCs, as they're known as, continue because they provide some greatly needed services and areas to allow seniors to age in place. And number 6, increase other than personal services funding for replacement furnishings, non-capital in senior centers that are as needed. Some of the furnishings in the senior centers are in a pretty sad state of affair, but the funding is not there to be able to improve the problem. And that is it.
Cool. And we're at 5 minutes, 30 seconds, but I'll give you one question if anyone has one question.
I have a quick question about the NORC item.
Yeah.
What do you mean by supporting the currently unfunded mandate for nursing hours? What does that refer to?
Well, there's no specification in the NORCs to, provide for a sufficient number of hours of nursing services. There are a lot of things that the elderly need, at those NORCs. They need blood pressure checks. They need things that they wouldn't necessarily need to go to a clinic or a doctor for. Blood pressure checks, those that are on blood pressure medication, just to have their blood pressure checked periodically. They need, explanations about their medications. They need advisement about, whether they ought to go to a doctor or not if they're having some issues. But, it's a catch as catch can in terms of how many hours that they can fund a nurse to be available. And it's not full time.
I have your updated question from Eleazar, Mary. I'll definitely add it to the Survey Monkey.
Okay.
But yeah, Catherine, keep it moving. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah.
Can I just say one quick thing?
Sure.
Shout out to Steve for including the seniors in the mental health services needs. Thank you, Steve.
That's why I love them. Go for it, Catherine.
All right, awesome. Just so housing's next, so Ariel, you're next. And just really quickly for members of the public, feel free to use the Q&A as each chair presents. And after we go through each committee chair, we're going to open it up for new items, because as you're noticing, some of the items that folks have raised in the previous months are on here already. So go ahead, Ariel. And we'll start with the expense.
Actually, do you mind if I start with capital? Okay, great. So good evening, everyone. I'm happy to provide essentially the items that we've put forward. There's a total of 6 on the capital, 7 on expense. What you'll see on the sheet is that we've continued to keep 4 items. I'll also just mention the 4th item specifically being providing funding for the construction of affordable, accessible housing for seniors. The additional 2 items that were added were really based on previous year's expense items. We provided increased funding for AEP and PPP programs for the preservation and rehabilitation of distressed buildings in CD12M, and also added an additional item of providing internet access in publicly available spaces, including HRA service centers. From what you'll see in the top 3 items, they are really sticking to what we said in previous years, trying to ensure that the affordability is still our key goal here. For the fiscal year 22 expense items, what you'll see is that we've kept roughly about 4 items from increasing funding for free legal representation in housing court. We have seen both the limitations as well, not to mention the greater need for this very service, and so we wanted to make sure that that was the top. We've asked for providing funding for the home-based program in CD12M, providing more funding for food pantries, which was brought forward to us by our Health and Environment Committee Chair, Steve Simon. Thank you. And we've also included some items in relation to supportive housing for LGBTQ youth, increasing the funding for more HPD housing code and DOB building code inspectors, increasing really what is educational resources, letting tenants know about what their rights are, and also providing for the creation of a fund to aid in the upgrading of an electrical system in buildings. What I would say in defense of this is that although the issue of affordability has long been of such great concern in CD12M, the pressures of affordability have fallen the hardest amongst many of our fellow neighbors who are the most vulnerable, yet some of the most dedicated allies who have served with us throughout these past 7 months. In the midst of the pandemic, many have lost their jobs, have had their hours cut back, their businesses closed for good, and now even face the need to traverse finding work in completely different employment sectors or to seek out an early retirement. The reality of such harsh truths gives us the means to understand that for far too many, affordability is far too out of reach when incomes have historically kept dipping and, although declining at this very moment, can and will continue to rise much higher within the next few years if we do not attempt to construct not just more housing, but housing that is better equipped to address the needs of families in such situations as just described. The lack of economic security in the face of a financial downturn reminds each and every one of us that our community's endeavors to be a place for everyone must follow by action, paying critical attention to those who are most vulnerable and must have resources allocated so as to ensure they can remain in Washington Heights and Inwood. With that, I'd like to pass along my time to Martin Collins, who was asked to speak a little bit more to his concerns on the issues.
Before we go, quick question or quick observation. Capital budget item 3 in aging and capital budget item 11 in housing and human services is the same. And I would recommend that they be combined to one or the other, which means the board gets another item to vote on as opposed to splitting votes between tasks that are the same.
Also, Ariel, I have a quick comment or question.
If I may, just because there's the time, could I still pass that along to Mark Collins?
If I can ask my question afterwards.
I paused your time for that interjection, Ariel. No offense, Wayne. Once Martin starts, I'll start it back up. But Sally, let's keep the questions for after Martin, if that's cool.
Okay.
Thank you. Martin, we're at 3 minutes, 30 seconds roughly, just to give you an idea of what you're working with here.
Are we acting on Wayne's suggestion?
Vice
Yes,
Chair?
we are, as soon as we get through the procedure here.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Ariel did pass it to
We're
Wayne. It
1
was his
minute and
time.
30 seconds, and let's move
Yeah,
on.
cool. Go for it, Martin.
Okay, I have 30 seconds on the capital budget, providing funding for the construction of 100% permanent affordable housing based on Community District 12's average median income to not-for-profit organizations and community land trusts that are partnered with not-for-profit developers is essential. It's the Housing Human Services #1 capital budget priority. I think it should receive the community board's highest recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. And yes, I'm so sorry, Wayne, your question.
It was not a question per se, it was an observation that we have a duplication between the aging committee and housing and human services the same. And so we know that technically there is a cutoff on how many expense items we get and how many capital items we get. So it should be in one or the other, which then frees up a slot for something else to get into the list.
Great.
Yeah, I was gonna just add to that. I'm like, I don't know if there's a preference in terms of if it's listed under aging or listed under housing. We can just we'll remove it from the SurveyMonkey and from the PDF one.
Which one do you want me to take it from?
I would like you to just, whatever is higher in the ranking, just keep that one
Oh, no.
out of the
No,
two.
We haven't ranked them yet, and you don't want to rank them while they're both on the list.
I said for
That's
now.
why I had my
I
hand
said
up.
for now. Yeah, I said for now. And
Well-
then we'll figure that out.
What I'll just say, that it was on the ranking last year. It was
Right.
5 out of 48.
Got it. Yeah, I saw it.
So what would you like me to do on the survey?
So we'll just pick from the committee ranking, whichever one's higher in committee.
Oh,
ranking.
okay, cool. Yeah,
that's what-
I got you.
Got it.
Good idea.
All right.
So Ariel, you have about 40 seconds left.
Yeah, I think I'm sorry, Sally, did you have a question?
Yeah, is there anything included, and I apologize because I can't see the expense list right now, but directly addressing homelessness, serving the homeless population, given that we don't have housing for them, or given that needs might come up like portable showers, portable toilets, that kind of stuff?
So home base is specific.
Homeless, people without homes.
Yeah, home base is specifically one of the areas in which we've, at least in my time serving in city government, I've specifically referred many people. That's where they can actually be connected. It's kind of a one-stop in many senses for a lot of aid.
Okay.
Could I just throw in, since affordable senior housing is the #3 item in the aging committee and the #1 item in the housing committee, I respectfully request that it be removed from aging and just go as housing and human services committee's #1 item, so that we're not pitting two committees against each other for what is essentially the same thing. Is that good
It-
with
it-
you, Mary?
It's number 4 on it, on the housing
Yes.
committee.
I'm sorry, I thought it was number 1.
No,
Huh?
Different item.
Ah. Okay, so it's number 4 out of 6 for housing and it's number 3 out of 3 for aging. So could somebody just flip a coin and tell Nobles,
Please.
Mary, Ariel, duke it out on the side and tell Nobles what to do? I don't think anybody else really cares.
All right. Ariel, I'm going to take it from you unless, ladies first. Is that cool?
I'm good here. Thank you.
Sweet. I'll take it from you. Thank you, Liz. All right. Catherine?
Wait, does Steve, do you have a question for Ariel on because your hand is up? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
was that to me?
Yeah, I was asking because I just saw your hand went up. So do you have
No,
a
yeah,
question for Ariel?
my hand was up on this issue we just resolved.
Okay, all right. So we are moving forward.
So then Steve, take your hand down.
I'm working on it.
And there are a couple of people with their hands up. Osi, Omar, and Tanya have their hands up.
Yeah, we have a Q&A. We have the time, so please. Let's.
So is Debbie here? I don't see her.
I don't see her.
All right, so Faye, you're next. And I have the expense sheet up, so it's easier to start with the expense sheet.
Okay.
Yeah, are you ready?
Yes, hello? Okay, it's me, right, Faye?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. Okay, yes, I would like to start, I'm gonna start with our expense budget. Let me see something. I also wanna see mine, okay. As you can see on the first, Jesus Christ, yeah. On the first item that we have for our expenses, well, actually, let me just take one step back. So on the expensive budget, we have 7 items. And then on capital, we'll have 13. But let's start with the expensive item. Number 1 priority for our committee is provide funding to improve the connectivity option of internet. Oops, sorry about my camera. Let me see if I can make it right. Hold on, please. Yeah, funding to improve the connectivity options of internet Wi-Fi services for the student in District 6. As we already witnessed throughout this pandemic, still, students are having, a lot of challenges trying to, especially families that cannot afford pay, for these services. So we consider this is to be our 1 priority, because from that actually depend the student, the outcome of how the school year is going to get unfold for them. And I think that having the proper connection also brings some kind of peace of mind, not only on the student, which is the most important, at least for us, but as well for their parents as well. A lot of parents are unemployed, and you name it, there is tons of problems. So our second priority, as you can see, is the need of mental health programs. We are asking to provide funding for community-based organizations to help family, youth, and children in need of mental health assistance and affected by COVID-19 in our district exclusively. I understood and I heard that some of my colleagues, Steve, I think, had something similar, but I don't know. I'm not sure if it was as specific as we had laid out in our second priority, and where we just precisely are asking for family, youth, and children, and mention, the COVID, especially people that has been affected, or families by the COVID-19. Our third priority is the needs for iPads and Chromebooks and District 6. But there was one of the specific requests that we have for the school, I think is PS 128, in which they are saying that they were short for 200 mixture of, 100 iPads and also 100 Chromebooks. Our 4 priority is the needs for ESL and ELL programs in our district, meaning provide funding for second language speakers, learners, and also for people with other languages as well. All in District 6. So I think this year, unlike other years, I think we're really being very specific, asking for all this kind of fundings and assisting just for our district, but also for the school district. Our number 6 priority is child care programs. I think this is something that is very, very important. Providing funding to increase child care in District 12 to help children develop essential skills like, for example, social and emotional communication skill, which is so much needed in this time that we are, facing with this pandemic. So they also will need they need to succeed in school and life as well. I guess looking at the emotional aspect, which, the outcome that this will have when hopefully all this pandemic, stay behind us. So hopefully providing all this funding may bring some peace of mind and stability, of mental stability. And yes, last, number 7 is the youth suicide prevention, which is something that we've been advocating all along for years and years. Steve has been, committee also has been advocating for the same. But and here we are asking for suicide funding for suicide prevention programs in District 12 for families and teen in shelter experiencing isolation and dealing with grief during this COVID-19. A lot of kids, they had lost their parents, relative, grandparents as well, and we know all that. But I don't have to stretch on this because we know how the story. So if I may, please, let's go to capital expenses now, please. Yes, yes. And our capital expenses, as you can see, our priority number 1 is for PS28. We are asking here in District 6 to provide funding to install civilian system security camera at the entrance and the exits of that school. Students' environments needs to be protected. This is something that way back to 2017, if I'm not mistaken, in 2017, when I used to be at the CC, we've been asking for this and I've been granting still.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry, 1 second, Faye. We're at 6 minutes. So do you have any last words? I'm sorry.
Say it again.
No worries. We're at 6 minutes. So do you have any last words to kind of sum up your capitals by any chance?
All right. So you know what? It's all on the screen. People can read it. And all we're asking is just my last word on this is I'm going to ask my colleague to be kind and turn a rating, as I'm going to try to be kind as well. So we can get at least number 1, number 2, and 3 when we do our overall ranking. That's it. So the rest is on the screen. People can read it and so forth. So I don't have to stretch. Any questions?
I just want to say thank you for your championship of the youth.
Yeah, thank you.
I have 2 quick questions.
Who's this?
Do we have time?
Wayne.
Noble for
Wayne, can you do 1? Because I can give 30
Yeah,
seconds, but we got to keep
we already have 7
keep it
minutes.
fair. Yeah.
Yes.
Because you can also follow up offline. We have 48 hours.
The point is, this is another case where the agent committee's Wi-Fi item, which is in capital, which seems to be broader than youth and education's expense item. So the question is, should a Wi-Fi request be in capital or expense? So we need to clarify that. And I think we need to eliminate one of them and go with the broader one. One is asking for connectivity community-wide, and one is only focusing on connectivity in the schools, but schools would be covered if we did the one that was community-wide. But the critical question is, should this be in expense or capital? And one of the ways we lose items is if we put it in the wrong category.
So community-wide is definitely going to be capital. Wi-Fi, if it's a narrow scope, might be expense. And Wayne is absolutely right about always going for the broader and not the more narrow.
The
I add a compliment that Nobles, please?
give me a second.
Well-
Is Faye, is that you?
Yes.
Okay, please answer so we can move on. And I give an answer, and Nobles, you can move forward.
Sure.
So we have the choice just to make a broader meeting in the whole district or not specifically just for the school. That's what Wayne had asked. So, wow.
Well, if I read it correctly, I think you're saying, what Mary's saying, system-wide upgrade on CB12 area to improve access to connectivity and Wi-Fi. That's one issue. And I think what Faye's saying, that she wants access to outreach, blah, blah, blah. What is it?
No, it's
No, I understood, but what Wayne, I understood what Wayne's proposing is just to keep the either to keep the broader aspect, you know, the whole district, or just I actually want to continue with number one, which is just a strictly.
I'm saying that schools are part of the community. So if we have an initiative that is community-wide, the schools are covered.
Well, why don't we just add some language that says.
But what happened, what I wanted to say is that this past summer, and even since the pandemic started, a school in particular, you know, and now more than ever.
Hey, it's more than schools that have the connectivity issue. Everyone that has to work.
So
has
I'm
the
sorry.
problem.
I'm sorry to jump in. We do have to keep it moving.
I know.
Sally also has a question. When it comes to your point of clarification, Wayne, you're completely correct here, and clearly Liz, seconded that. But the thing though is that, like, can we make this decision offline? I will change it on the Survey Monkey, and then we can keep it moving. Sally, you had a question.
Yeah, this is my question. It seems like many of the expense items are targeted specifically to one or two schools where the problems exist district-wide, air conditioning, facilities upgrades, et cetera. I don't know if I'm looking at capital expense right now, but I wonder why we targeted 128 and 28 specifically when certain of the problems I know are district-wide.
And I would definitely say this is a question that could probably be answered offline. And if Faye wants to give me some changes,
but
send them to me.
I wanted to say something that is highly important. Our community or our district started on 155th Street and ended in 218. The district school started on 137 and go up to 218, meaning that if we only concentrate in our district, we're gonna then leave a school that are already, at 137. This is part of our district school.
No, CB9 would take care of it.
All right.
I'm saying
we can you please handle this offline, guys? I need to give people fair time because it's not fair to Ariel. It wasn't fair to Liz. It wasn't fair to Curtis.
It's
I would
not
like
fair
to keep
no
this
one,
moving.
and I thank you. So I really want to keep our.
Thank you.
Okay.
Catherine?
So next
Can,
up,
can,
we
can,
have,
can I raise a point? I have a point to make.
wait, sorry. We
Okay.
have 4 more committees.
Yeah, I really want to keep this fair for
So
people.
we want to
folks.
keep it going. We know folks have been patiently holding their hand
Right.
up. Let's honor everyone's time.
Right.
Let people move through their presentations, and then we can just go back.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
All right. So next up is Domingo.
I want to start off with capital. So basically, what we're seeing is, you hear me?
Yes, you're all set. We can hear you, Domingo. You're on mute now, though. There you go.
All right, cool. So basically, what we're seeing is the lack of infrastructure when it comes to the business, sector within our society, within our community board. So a lot of the suggestions on the committee were based on a lot of addressing not only infrastructural but more pipelines of communication, which seemed to be there, but it was kind of sort of like facade-ish. So basically, our first recommendation was business training capacitation hubs, in addition to the service already provided by SBS, and up to and including personal coaches and resource navigators. So once what we noticed during COVID is that there's too many people saying the same thing, but a lot of the resources get lost in translation. So being able to have the adequate personnel to be able to explain what the resources are and how to connect to them is going to be ideal moving forward. Weatherproofing for outdoor dining, safer street initiatives, and plaza investments was more aimed towards the city planning. As we understand what we were seeing during a pandemic is the potential of being able to be better organized when it comes to outdoor, not only dining, but outdoor activities. Infrastructure and business subsidies to support the optimizing of outdoor dining. So now that we are dining outdoors, there should be some either micro grants or grants accessible to businesses to be able to make a transition as they engage in this new world of life during COVID and after, hopefully. And funding for a new facility for the Washington Heights Corner project, which is actually not new. I just didn't find the number, so that's not a new project. But I think that being able to encourage spaces in a location which is equitable for all is important in order to be able to deal with the situation that our community is experiencing with drug usage, etc. We shouldn't abandon them just because of that. And now over to
Nobles, I think he wants to.
And as she switches over, we're at 3 minutes.
Oh,
we're good.
I thought Catherine is handling. I'm sorry, my bad.
All good.
And then our first rank was funding for business committee virtual and physical resource guide for new and existing businesses. Information is key, regardless of the times. And we felt that it was extremely important to, as volunteers and as people who give recommendations at a city level, to be able to have a hub where we could share resources with all the businesses and everybody directly that's directly impacted by our committee. Spanish-speaking health inspectors, that's an ongoing situation that our community is experiencing. You have inspectors that don't necessarily speak the language, etc. So more investments on that. Virtual organizational chart of role and responsibilities by city agencies. We want to know who's who. So when we get the information, we already know who to identify as such. Marketing support for businesses, and which is ongoing, is not new. And educational campaign on potential impact of inward rezoning on businesses. And I would like, for the rest of the time, if anybody in the committee who's on would like to chime in, feel free to do so.
And for this piece, you have about 45 seconds. Any questions?
Domingo, could you clarify in the capital, the first one where it says business training, are you talking about building a business training center or funding business training programs?
I think it's much more on a center, being able to build a center that's able to do that. We could specify, we could be more clear.
Yeah, because if it was funding, that would not be capital.
Correct,
And
correct.
also the third item where you're talking about business subsidies. Business subsidies would be expense, not capital.
That's correct. We'll switch it over.
Okay.
Can you just send me those changes? Can you email me those changes, Domingo? And I will add them to the Survey Monkey.
All right.
Thank you.
Are we moving next to the next one?
Yep.
No, I
Yeah.
have a question.
Are we
All right, we're at 5 minutes, 30 seconds. So whoever it is, you got 30
We're
seconds.
over. We're over. So we over.
Okay, cool. Catherine, up to you.
So next up is Debbie.
Okay, guys, just one more thing. I think the first sentence I said when we first started is that we wanted to flip the switch. I really want to encourage the newer members or those of you who have a question so that you guys get inclusivity here. I know that we have experienced people that we love their contributions, but we also want this process to be as inclusive as possible. That's the comment I wanted to make. So don't be afraid, just ask away.
Ready for me?
Yeah, go ahead, Debbie. We're on capital.
Okay. The capital, there haven't been a lot of changes to what we focused on the past. I would just highlight that the first item we have about accessibility in the subway system is one that we even talk about. I mean, it's such a paramount issue for everyone who uses New York City Transit, but certainly in our district. And we talked about even making this our only capital priority. But we just decided to rank it 1 and keep some of our other things, and which were rehab on the A train stations at 181 and 168, and the 1 train at 207th Street. So this is pretty self-explanatory, pretty straight up. And the IRT indications are a test of how old you are. But we can flip to the expense now. And on this expense side, you'll see there are some changes to some of the things you might have heard from this committee in the past. And we tried to better align what we hear from the committee and from the community and what we're sort of responding to throughout the year, and align that with these expense items. So it starts with a general sort of increased funding that relates to maintenance, cleaning, security, all those things that definitely have been diminished. I mean, granted, cleaning in the subway is really going well right now for obviously a not good reason. But the other items, we've lost a lot of services and stations. Next, fare fares. I mean, this is an interesting one because if you'll remember the community board, when Aisha took this on, a leadership role of getting the community board focused on this excellent program, which offers half price Metro cards to people. This is one of those places, like many parts of the budget, that are on the chopping block with the dire budget situation. So fare fares is proposed to be getting cut, I think, in half. It obviously was already insufficient to the need. So you'll see that here. And then next we have 2 traffic studies on 2 areas, again, that we talk about a lot. One is a whole area from 165th Street going north on Fort Washington in front of the hospital. And, your city buses are getting hung up, people are getting hung up. It's a complicated place because obviously a massive hospital is there. And then the other 207th, where I'm late because I just came from there and listened to community members talk about the situation over there. But this is one that also Richard Allman has taken a lot of leadership on making sure that it stays on our radar. And I don't think I need to sort of explain to this committee sort of how complicated that spot is. And then we just have, as you can see, just sort of the general potholes and one thing we discussed with Mary Anderson, sort of, again, it sort of crosses an aging as well, amongst other things. But we've gotten lots of new crosswalks and more pedestrian friendly curb cuts, except sometimes they don't connect to the street. So you actually end up with this like big crevice. And so that's it.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Debbie.
We have a minute for any questions.
Yeah, so we're actually going to start Q&A because that was our last committee presentation.
Perfect.
I forgot licensing doesn't have items. And so we're going to go in order, as Elisa mentioned, folks who haven't necessarily spoken up and new members. So we have Tanya, Marielle, and Danielle.
Before we go to Q&A for Debbie, her expense item, the second one on fare fares, are we missing a word or phrase? It says restore, funding at least 2, and then it stops.
Oh, let me pull that up from, I don't know what happened there. I think it said more. It was probably a column width thing. I'll look back at my source document. Thanks, Wayne.
Okay.
And when you find out, Debbie, you can cut in at a nice point. Let me know and I'll update the Survey Monkey in real time.
Okay.
Okay, Tanya, go ahead.
Yeah, two things. I don't know if Curtis is he on again? But I asked him. I think it was an
Yeah,
important
I'm here.
point. Oh, good. Thank you, Curtis. I think what you had answered to me was an important point. I think it should just be on public record in terms of. I know that one of your items was to address expand implicit bias. Training. And I wanted to express that this is whether this would be impacted by the federal government, particularly the executive office, barring funding from anybody receiving federal funds from offering like anti-racist, that type of training. And I think that's important because if we're asking, NYPD to do something, and if they're getting part of the federal funding, I just want to know how that would be impacting, that goal. Because it seemed like it would adversely impact that goal. And then the second point, I wanted to just wonder how we are getting these budget things to the public so they can see, because I think it would be very hard for people to see this like first in a meeting or something and then try to make sense of it, to even ask a question or even know how to ask a question or even understand what any of this is, because even some of us who are on the board and we've seen it, we have a lot of questions. So I just wanted to know how we're, how that's being done in terms of in advance, getting that to people so that the public actually can be in, make informed, have informed questions.
I have my hand raised and I have a similar comment.
Is about the training or about the actual for the general public?
Yeah, in past, the public has actually testified. This is a public hearing. I'm just wondering when we're going to hear from the public. I mean, you can stand.
As soon as the board members stop asking their questions.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now, that's why I called stacks of Marielle and Danielle to move into
Yeah.
the general public.
And Catherine addressed that earlier on, Sally, and it's happening as we speak. It's
Okay.
getting prepared.
I'm just a little concerned.
It's all good.
Do you want me
Marielle,
to
you want to go ahead?
Am I
And then
to
I'll connect
respond?
offline in terms of the process because
And Curtis didn't even respond to my question, so I know that he didn't. I had asked the question, so
Yeah, I know that. That's what I said. That we can connect offline in terms of the process. I do think you're right. It's confusing. This is actually my first budget hearing because I never knew it was a special meeting. So there's a lot of changes we can make, and I think with changes that we made to the website, and the fact that it is through SurveyMonkey, we can get it out to the public sooner. But you're right in terms of like the goals that every month the committees are meeting to discuss these items and are actually bringing forth what has been brought up all year, right, into the budget ranking and priorities. And I think we can do that. So,
Yeah.
Curtis.
And just to briefly, I do understand the issue and the complexity with the federal now new policy or executive order. I think it's worth keeping on the list just in case there is any sort of state or city funding that would trickle down. That's my response.
Have we been following the chat? Catherine,
We're
Curtis?
gonna get around to that.
Yes, we are following the chat, and the less the board members talk, the sooner we can hear from the public. So I respectfully request that my colleagues hold their tongues so we can get to hear what the public is saying, because it's a public hearing.
Thank you, Liz.
okay, thank you. So we're gonna allow the two new members to speak, which is Marielle and Danielle, and we're going to the public.
My hand is also raised.
Thank you.
I see all you, Aisha. I got you.
Thanks, Catherine. So just wanted to first second what Steve mentioned earlier. I believe it was under the expenses, how 3 different committees had put Wi-Fi, and if there's a way that we can combine that. But something I would stress is within combining it, making it quite specific to state to include public schools, nursing homes, public spaces, something to that effect. And then my second point would be, and I think it'll be addressed in the section later when we open it up to members of the public, is how, just for my own knowledge and for everyone else on the line, how are we, or how are committee chairs and committees in general scanning what other funding is available? There was a comment in the Q&A where it says here some of the council members allocated all their capital funds to internet issues in public schools. So I'm just interested in the process. Have committee, in finding out what's already being funded before putting things through this process.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you, Maria. And I can answer some of those questions offline, Maria.
Thank you.
All right, Danielle.
Everybody, so this is for, I guess, this is regarding the traffic and transportation items. And I guess for Debbie, I didn't see anything on there for the. And when I was on the committee, I know that the issue of safety, especially when there's low visibility at night and when there's inclement weather, it's very difficult to see. And I had proposed like installing reflectors or something that would make it easier to see where the lanes end. Also, the question of lighting. So I'm just wondering if it's possible. I was looking at the items and it looks like maybe it's possible to expand the last one, the one that speaks to potholes and pedestrian crosswalks. Potentially we can expand that to include funding for the highways, specifically lighting and reflectors for safety. Thanks.
Is that a yes, Debbie?
I'm sorry, I can barely hear Danielle, but if she was saying like, why don't we wrap in the issue of lighting, which, I mean, she highlighted one of the more severe instances, but to her point, it's also a broader issue. I think that's a great idea to wrap it into that last item and the expense as she outlined, where we talk about potholes, we talk about proper crosswalks. I don't see, is that okay? Can we do that? Because
Yeah, we can do that. What would you like to add to it? Just add more lighting?
I don't know if you heard the whole thing, Debbie, but it was not just about the lighting, but it was also about the reflectors or something that can make it easier to see, because at night it's really hard to see with the lights from the oncoming traffic. You can't really see straight very easily. And so I think having reflectors in additional lighting.
Well, maybe we could just say visibility. I don't like getting too like over specified. It was like whatever bucket I think we're saying like funding. So maybe the word visibility.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I said is
just
visibility
pick it,
measures.
yeah.
I just added
Right.
visibility measures.
Yeah, all right, good.
Reflectors, etc.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle.
Great. So we're going to pause on board members.
Yes.
I see some new board members have raised their hand.
Sure, finally.
My word. So I know Maggie Clark initially said, I'd like to have folks from the public, if you can just raise your hand, use the raise hand function at the bottom of the attendee list. Thank you, Alexander.
I'm sorry, was that just the only other board member left?
No, there's 4 more. I got you though, Aisha. I got you. There was 4 more. All right, so I'm gonna have Maggie allow to talk. Go ahead, Maggie. Maggie,
Unmuting. Yes, I'm unmuted. So I like the idea of decibel meters and calibrators for every officer in the 34th and training to go with it. I've asked the 34th on a number of occasions whether they have these, and they don't. Another point, Parks Capital. There's a West Side Greenway that is partially finished. I understand they have the rest of it on the books, to go down to the Little Red Lighthouse from from Dyckman Street. And it would be nice to finish that, because then there would be a water level route that would go all the way from the Battery up to Dyckman Street. We need to go further north, but at least get that gap finished.
Maggie, I just want to let you know that's what that project that's called Lighthouse Link.
Okay.
That's what that project is. So thank you for clarifying that for people.
Yeah, I you rushed through because you didn't have time, so I didn't see it. I've also mentioned there are a couple of other issues, and apparently they're not for this evening, but there are other issues that the public has an interest in. The Ring Garden got $50,000 grant from the borough president 3 years ago, and OMB is preventing us from using it. And, you know, the community board could be helpful in helping to release these funds to the garden. In addition, participatory budgeting 3 years ago, one of the items that won was street trees for Inwood. And there were supposed to be 75. And I think they planted 5. And, you know, I hope that, sorry about that. I hope that this can be fixed.
Liz.
Thank you, Maggie. What we'll do, if you can drop your email, if you're comfortable with that, in the chat, or just send it to us,
Sure.
and we can have some folks follow up on those 2 other items.
Thank you.
Angel,
I just wanted to say a clarification on the Ring Garden that she mentioned, the 50,000 that was actually awarded by the state senator at the time. So you actually have to go through the current state senator to access the money. It's not the borough president. That was Senator Alcantara that awarded that money.
And just to make a quick announcement for the public members, you guys have 2 minutes to speak, but also within that 2 minutes, if you have a pointed question for one of the chairs and their items, please make it, because the 2 minutes also covers their answer, just to keep it moving. Thank you.
okay. So I guess Alexander got his items spoken on. So we'll go to Cheryl Miller. Cheryl, so you have to.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so you saw my question in the chat. I wanted to direct something to Curtis, if he's on here still. I think when he was giving his presentation earlier, he said about the speed cameras, like he's taking down like certain areas that possibly need them. I'm right on West 165 and Broadway, and everybody knows that Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital is right over here on the corner. And the dirt bikes are just flying up and down Broadway all night long. I'm hearing the cars drag racing and everything. And, you know, you have people coming out of the hospital, working in the hospital. You have a lot of pedestrians over here. This is a very high traffic area, as everybody's familiar with. And I think that the speed cameras are very vital. The speed cameras and the speed humps in this particular spot over here. I've been living here 14 years. There have been in the past a lot of accidents over here. Now compounded with the dirt bikes and the drag racing cars, forget it. So I think it's very important for the speed cameras and the humps to be right here on West 165 and Broadway. I don't know if there are already speed cameras over here, but if there aren't, there definitely needs to be speed camera.
Okay, we'll make sure Curtis gets that note. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Cheryl.
I got it. Noted.
Oh,
Noted.
gotcha. I didn't see you there.
Yep.
Last but not least is Alexander, and then we'll go back to board members who've been waiting.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for letting me speak. Very quickly, I appreciate all of your commitment to Upper Manhattan and all the needs that we face as a community, from social to housing to transport and everything. But I do want to point out that culture is very limited uptown. And well, not limited, actually, it's quite rich. However, we're the small voice because we are not making daily changes to people's lives. We're a long-lasting change in people's lives. And the Hispanic Society is the largest arts organization or cultural organization in Upper Manhattan. And we're in buildings that are over 100 years old. And we are trying to make ourselves the hub of culture and good gathering place for the residents of Manhattan. And the city keeps on changing the regulations, of course, right now with the tight budgets and restrictions going on. We were blocked out of getting any funding for capital improvements. And we feel that we want to be the place to, grandparents to bring their children to a place to go, a good haven for them to go, bring their kids to, their grandchildren to, and hang out and see, experience something. And it's an ongoing challenge when culture is regulated to not to be crucially a social importance. And so I just want to speak out and say that, we make a difference in people's lives on a daily basis as well. And I know it's not immediate transformation or immediate existence, or you don't see it on a daily basis, but we are part of the fabric, and culture needs to be supported equally as traffic lights and whatnot. The Upper Manhattan Culture Arena does not get its fair share of the city funding because we are not on Fifth Avenue, and we are not. And we have city council members who allocate their funds, and of course, properly they allocated funds this year to the schools to create infrastructure for internet. But without their support, we have a challenge in getting our fair share of the city support to make a difference to our community. And that's all I have to say. It's like, you make a difference and remember culture. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Alex. And for folks that need to know, the Hispanic Society's line item is on Parks and Cultural Affairs Capital. Catherine?
Yeah, so we're gonna head on back to community board members. I saw Etta put her hand
And with that, may I add for community board members, also 2 minutes. And if you have a question, you want crosstalk, all within the 2 minutes, but we'll have to keep this moving.
So we only have 3. So we're gonna do 3 and then we're gonna move on.
Oh, if we have 3 people, then we can do 3 minutes each then.
Yeah,
Cool.
so Aisha?
Yes, my question is to Debbie with the Traffic and Transportation request for funding to do a traffic study on 165th to 170th. The reason why I am questioning this is, first of all, that exact area was an area that I advocated for a large swath of the community that took issue with the Haven Plaza being implemented because of the issues that were already existing. So to say that we now need a study because it's being exacerbated is due to negligence on the part of this board in doing that. And additionally, allowing the bikes to be added on 169th Street, which we were promised wouldn't happen, that parking would not be eliminated. Further, in the discussions about the Haven Plaza, it was stated that there would be continued oversight on that area so that we would be able to determine whether the interim plaza should be a continuing project or whether it needs to be removed due to impact to the community. So why would there need to be funding for more traffic studies when they're supposed to be studying it on an ongoing basis? That funding could be going to something else for the community instead of for an issue, which, by the way, the studies that were already existing were done by a private contractor for Columbia University, not by the DOT, and the study was denied. The community was denied the opportunity to review the study before the vote happened. So basically the information in the study was not even paid any attention to. So I need to know, what is the justification for that line item?
So Debbie, you have 30 seconds to answer this, or you can take it offline and have a more in-depth conversation.
I think we've done this movie enough times. So this actually doesn't relate to anything having to do with the pedestrian plaza. The sort of, I think the committee and probably those that have been on even longer than I have, we just keep bumping into.
I hear about transportation, aging, education.
This won't count towards your time. Please go on mute, whoever that was. All right, Debbie, go for it.
So this issue is really, the M4, for example, can get just entirely stuck in that 165th, 168th, and just the way people are pulling into the driveways at the hospital. And, there's cars parked and deliveries and pedestrian drop-offs and all the hospital stuff. And so it's mostly about that. There's some issues related to the Armory. And this one's complicated because it does include, again, it includes a hospital, it includes a medical center, it includes the MTA, it includes
cool.
That was the idea about it.
To say that we've done this movie already is rude, first of all. But to say that it's not,
Aisha, you come at me with this issue all the time.
So Catherine, who's up next? Catherine, who's up next?
We cannot replicate a Trump Biden debate.
Who's up next, Catherine? Who's up next?
We have Sally Fisher.
3 minutes.
I'm gonna hold my comments.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. Next up is Steve.
Is that the last one?
That's it.
All right. So we're gonna call it a day.
I did.
Steve?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, man.
We got you.
We got you.
Okay. All right. I'd like to appeal to Faye that we eliminate the duplication between our two items about mental health needs. And if you, I
Ahí
wouldn't
se
want to
pongan
see the
en
board
mute.
members divide their votes between these two items, because I'm hoping that we'll be able to keep mental health at the top of our priority list once again. So if, I think we can resolve this. I could easily just add to my item reference to families, youth, and children. And so we can have one combined request for increased mental health services. Good.
I can do that for you right now, but just tell me, this is expense, right?
Yes.
And what's the actual line that it says now? Because I'm looking at a lot of stuff. I'm sorry. What's the actual? What does it say?
Well, it's, has Faye agreed to this?
Oh.
No, she has not.
No, I was trying to type that. I'm about to exit. I think it's okay, but I'm wondering also that if it's some way we can show, because every year I'm losing most of everything that has to do with health. And, you know, I would like to show that we also are on that issue as well. You have,
Well, I think,
yes?
I'm sorry, you're losing what on health?
No, that in previous year, I noticed that I have to, I shouldn't speak aside, but my committee have to give up other, other item based on the same, thing that it has to do with health. And I would like to show that our committee also is advocating for those issues as well. If you think that.
Well, I think we have to look at this on a broader,
Exactly. It is
from a broader perspective in terms of the board as a whole.
I understand.
Let me interject. Allow me to interject.
Okay.
1 second, because I know you and Wayne have already made your points. Faye, of course, is saying I would also like to advocate. So we're gonna have to figure out a Solomonic way that no opinion gets superimposed over other
May I
opinions.
say
Wait, let me finish my point. So something that can be resolved offline. I think that we've all know each other long enough to.
But Elliot,
wait. Let me just kind of like.
Well, I think we're missing a point. It's not a matter of superimposing anything. We're working on board ranking. So if the board feels that mental health is a high priority, it shouldn't be a pull between committees. We should be looking at what are the board priorities.
I agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I agree with you, Wayne. I'm not disagreeing here.
I understand, but if I, on behalf of my committee can keep that item, especially the way we phrase it, I would appreciate that. If it's not, then, what the majority said, I will go for it. But every year when we go through this, I notice that when it comes to health item, we have to give up, and
Well, that could be because it more appropriately belongs under the jurisdiction of the health committee.
Yes, absolutely. But also the youth committee is advocating for the youth as well.
Elliot, hey, hold on.
Understand.
Because we're not going to repeat back and
Right,
forth.
right.
We cut it off for other folks. So Faye, the item that you both have listed are broad and also does specify the families. We can look at it. And they both also include affected by COVID-19.
Yes.
So we're comfortable with having it be one. At the end of the day, when we put it in the Survey Monkey, it doesn't come up if it was health and environment or if it was aging or if it was somebody else. It just comes up as a ranking. Internally, we know that's what a committee proposed.
Right.
So I just
very good.
the language is inclusive of families and not necessarily. So I think it's the same item. I just need to know yes or no. The language is comfortable, and we can do it offline via email as well.
May I say
Okay, so Faye, do you agree at keeping some
I just at
language
this point,
just in a
yes.
different committee?
I'm going to
All right.
I'm going to
Okay,
agree.
good. So
All right.
moving
Okay,
along.
cool.
And I have
So-
put it down. Thank you.
So really
I
quickly,
have-
Catherine, what would you like me to do on the Survey Monkey? Because I was kind of lost in between that.
Just keep it on.
After the words seniors, insert families, youth, and children.
And this is on yours,
Yes.
Steve?
Of course.
And remove phase.
Remove from mine the two words and others.
Okay.
And after seniors, insert families, youth, and children.
Got it. And then remove phase from it.
Yes.
Done. Thanks.
please?
All right, folks. I want to thank.
Wait, may I say something, please?
Go for it, Liz.
So I think that what's really important to consider here is that Faye is a consistent and strong advocate for youth and schools. And Steve is a consistent and strong advocate for health and mental health in the community. And that ultimately we're ranking the board's priorities. And I think that this item continues to enjoy a very high ranking, in part because Steve consistently stresses how important it is, and in part because Faye consistently stresses how important it is. So I would like very much for us not to think of it as being Faye's item or Steve's item of it, but that it is the board's item and that it's a strong priority. And the fact that it happens to come out of one committee or the other doesn't say anything about its importance and doesn't say anything about the respective advocacy. I think having more
All
cameras
right, I think we get it.
is important, but it's coming out of Curtis's committee. That
Okay.
doesn't mean I don't think it's important. So there is
Understood.
zero
All right.
disrespect to you, Faye, or your committee. Your advocacy is part of what strengthens our work as a board.
Yep.
And I don't think that's lost
Okay,
on anybody.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz.
I like, if you guys will, Nobles and Catherine, we have two guests, Nelson and Dino,
All
and
right.
Natalie
Thank you.
Spino. We would like to say if they're gonna be able to say a few things, and then just, you guys, your wish, we can call the meeting for adjournment.
Okay, before we get there, Eleazar, just,
Sure, no
I don't
problem.
know if this is actually, it might be either Debbie or Liz. Please take a look at the Q&A. There's an item that might be potentially new. So look at it and let me know. And we can move to Nelson.
I just, Nelson Andino from the Manhattan Borough President's Office. I just want to clarify one. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, so I just wanted to clarify in the beginning of for the minutes that the minimum movable property request is $50,000, not $35,000, just for it reflects your minutes or your record. And then on one or two occasions, a couple of comments were made about Councilman's budget all going to schools with capital funding. And that is not true. It's the focus, try to focus on school and technologies as is the borough president, but it's not the entire amount has not gone to schools only. Just wanted to clarify that piece. So, and that's just for the record. What we will like to know, and I know Faye mentioned what we are trying to find out is how many kids out there. That's not a set number. And also, not all the schools are completely wired. So those are two of the pieces. But I just wanted to clarify those 2 points. That's it.
Great, thank you, Nelson. Eliasa, was there somebody else you said that?
No, that was just Nelson. I wanted you to, because you guys didn't know him prior, so I just wanted him to do his clarifications. And now just get to the QA, and then we can call the meeting for adjournment.
So it's 8:30. You know, we did not want to kind of prolong this, considering it's going to be a couple number of days. There is, I want to just highlight again in the Q&A around visibility and on the bike paths by the Henry Hudson Parkway. I see Barbara has a hand on right now. We just kind of want to, in summation, discuss the changes that are going to happen on Survey Monkey and the timeframes again. So Barbara, is it related to an item or process or not?
I can answer any process questions for sure.
And Catherine, you had said something and you said my name and a new item and I didn't catch it. If you could just repeat what you said.
The Q&A has a bike path on. Yeah.
So the bike path item, that's within the parks, and I answered that part. The lighting item, that's a DOT thing, so I defer to Debbie on that.
Okay, and then I think we dealt with that. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Will the Excel spreadsheets be updated to reflect consolidations and recirculated?
That is an Eliasar question, but I'm going to say it's a yes.
Well, that's a process question.
It's okay. Yes.
Yeah.
So, Catherine Nobles.
Yeah, if look, I've been updating the Survey Monkey in real time. I have everyone's changes and I can go back through them if you'd like. But we can use that, and Eleazar, you can update the Excel sheet, or Catherine, update the Excel sheet however you need to. From
Yeah,
those
we have an
changes.
open doc that we can also make our own corrections. So,
Yep.
okay. All right.
Nobles, is it safe to say folks can vote tonight, or should we ask folks to hold off till tomorrow morning?
I would probably say hold off till tomorrow morning, just in case there are offline conversations that happen, or people sit on something tonight and then want to send a change or something tomorrow morning. But also, folks, like if you want to take a look at the survey right now, you can still access the link, just don't vote. And if you see something that needs adjustment, we're not adding new items, first of all. We're just like adjusting and wordsmithing if we need to. Like we can do that. Just email me. But you can look at it now just to fact check, just in case.
Okay. So, Catherine.
So the link, everyone has it. Like Noble said, make sure you please put your full name on it. Don't want to repeat the school. And then again, you can rank them, either drag and drop or put the numbers. If you feel more comfortable doing it via paper and emailing it, that can be circulated tomorrow.
Yep.
And you can just send it via email to Ebenezer. So we're having the office collect all the information and the Survey Monkey as well. And so, like I said at the beginning, it will be open for 48 hours. I also would just reach out again in what would be Thursday evening, Friday morning, in case, kind of the response rate's a little bit lower. So the office is going to reach out. I do see Mary with a hand up. So go ahead.
And the thing is,
Ebony,
before we
who's
leave,
Ebony?
Ebenezer.
yeah, no one gets left behind. You're all gonna walk through this process. We're gonna all walk through this process together as one. So we're gonna call this meeting for adjournment. Can I get a motion to get this?
I have a question.
I didn't see you, Mary. Sorry.
Mary was recognized by Catherine, but we can probably end it.
My bad. My bad.
I just want to know if we're going to be, how will you know who needs to get the stuff printed out? I mean, I can do the Survey Monkey, but not the way it exists, because it's like 2 pages of stuff. So I need to be able to print it out,
You mind
use it as
stopping by the
scrap paper, and then put it on Survey Monkey.
Nobles?
Sure. Like if
You're out
you
of way
wanted
of
to
meeting with her.
if you wanted to print it out, Mary, what I would say is that so you don't want to do it. Let's talk offline. I can help you out offline. I'll shoot you an email and then we'll connect. Is that cool?
That is why I asked whether the Excel spreadsheets would be updated and recirculated, because people could use that as sort of a working document. And when they mark it up, they can then go into Survey Monkey and do it right.
Yeah, and so so tomorrow that PDF, that Excel document can be recirculated. So folks who would rather do it on paper and then enter it manually in Survey, just hold off until tomorrow when you receive it.
Cool.
And then if you catch
Catherine,
anything on the wordsmithing, just let you can email Nobles and myself, and we'll keep track of that.
Yep.
Catherine, Natalie has a point of clarification or some observations to make.
Yes, just I won't take much of your time, although I'm very, very glad with the outcome here, and thank you for your service. But in the discussion with regarding allocations to the Ring Garden, I just wanted to clarify that there is an allocation from the Borough President's Office to the Ring Garden that Maggie was referring to. That would be something totally separate of any allocations that may or may not have been given by previous or current state senators. So it wasn't an either or, but since it was said here on the public record, I wanted to clarify it. Thank you.
Great.
Great.
Motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Second.
All right. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
guys. Thank you.
Eleazar, just real quickly, I'd like to speak. Could Steve Simon, are you still on?
Yes.
Good. Could you please contact me about this Ring Garden money so we start to get this straightened out? I've been trying to reach you and it's been difficult. It's just Zoom or whatever. It's been difficult. So can we talk on the phone tomorrow and try to straighten some of this out?
Yeah, the issue is not with OMB. It's more difficult and, well, it's a different issue.
Well, can we talk tomorrow? Can I call you? Are you at the office or at home? Where are you?
I'm in yeah, you can reach me in my office tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, you are at your office. Okay, great. I'll call you there. and speak to you there and just see what the difficulties are. Okay,
Okay.
great. Thanks a
Okay.
lot. Glad to
Don't,
connect.
don't call between 1 and 3.
Oh, you have a meeting? Okay, I'll
Yes.
call you after.